Welcome to Primitive Mycology. This is what you will need to do this project. The supply list will be right after this. So basically what you're going to do here is your induction coil module. You're going to get that kind of placed in your project box where you're wanting to mount it at, and center is always going to be your best bet. That way it's got space, airspace on each side to let heat dissipate. And your coil, although later we're going to be soldering this on to the contact plate here, we're going to have to notch this out here, and that's another reason for centering this. Also, this kind of lets you get a feel for, how far you're going to stick out. That way you could move it back and forth if you wanted, if you had a bigger box. But as far as I'm concerned, I kind of would prefer to keep it longer. I may end up cutting this down just a little bit. We'll see once we get going here. Your momentary push button switch, you want to place your module so that your momentary switch is going to fit. You'll be placing that in the lid, somewhere along this back side. You'll pre-drill you a hole. And it's very simple how that switch works. You can see on here that there's just an in and an out. You don't have to worry about your ground with this. It's just a break in the connection for your power. Your power will come in, your power will go out, and then onto your module. And your ground, you'll run straight through with your ground. You don't need to worry about doing anything fancy and tying anything together. That's really just kind of a waste. Leave your ground long on your pigtail and run it direct. Don't mess around with making, multiple little short wires to do this and that. The more times you break your connection, the weaker the signal gets. That's not what you want with something that you are trying to heat something up with. Also, your power supply will come with an end that fits it. These, you can use these, but I don't care for these at all. Not whatsoever. So instead of that, the pigtails that you've seen at the beginning of the video, this will plug right into your power supply, and then you're going to drill a hole in the end of your project box. Make sure you kind of pre-fit from the inside where your plug is going to fall out. You don't want to end up too low where you're cutting into the bottom of your project box. I like to bring mine up not quite center of the elevation, and then you'll just mark your center and drill your hole. Then with your leads, I like to leave myself a couple more inches than what I need, because I can kind of like tuck this down into the box. And I'm going to leave my ground full length until I get to the point where I can get a good idea what I'm going to need to go to the module. And you can see on the module, this is super simple. You got a positive and a negative. The other side, you can use these terminals, but keep in mind when you use this, you're going to be heating up something, something metal, you know, a scalpel, the tip of a syringe for, you know, sterilization. And when you do that, although the coil itself is not going to heat up, heat will transfer from the object you're heating back to that, and it can melt the plastic block on the terminal here. So you're going to be better off to just solder direct to this contact plate. This is super simple. Sometimes if I want to pre-fit something, I may use something like these little soldering pliers. But for this project, I'm not going to need it. Everything that I'll be soldering will be right to this contact plate, and everything else is just going to be the power in and out of this momentary switch, and then the ground direct. And I'm going to use hot glue to fix it in the box. When I'm done, I will drill a couple of small holes around this box to let heat through so it can breathe. Otherwise, you may end up overheating and burning up your module in there if you're using it a lot. This is really a super easy project. I think maybe total for everything here, I think I had $43 in this, and you can't buy one of these for less than $150. I think I've seen some up to like $275. Although, you know, it's always good to support your local hobby community. That's a big jump from what this actually cost to build. And yeah, they might use a little bit better parts on some things, but I kind of doubt that. They can't be that much better. Even with a little bit better module than this, I gave 15 bucks for this one. For like 23, you can get a module that's substantially more powerful than this, which will heat up your blade or your tool, whatever you're using. It'll heat it up a little faster. That doesn't make up for, you know, 200 and some dollars, or another $100. I know everything's worth something, but if you have any kind of do-it-yourself ability, why not make a fun project? You know, you could build at least 3 of these for what you can buy one for. Why not try it out? And if you're not happy with it, then buy one from somewhere else, I guess. But I'll assure you, I have not been disappointed with mine. I'm actually building another one just to show you guys. This is a fun little project, and it's never bad to have a backup. And again, even building the second one, I'm still at least $50 less money than if I were to buy the cheapest one I can find. So why not, you know? Anyways, I'm going to pause the video here and get to doing some things, and I'll come back and record more clips as I go through. I don't want to have to show this entire process. I mean, I'll show the entire process, but I want to shorten the video kind of, with everybody still getting an idea of how this actually works. Super simple, guys. Okay, so your box should look something like this. You'll have a hole down on the end that's 3/8. I came up 5/8 with the center of mine, and it's in the center of the width. I use an 1/8 of an inch bit for a pilot hole. And then your other side, I just kind of mark with like a dry fit where the coils are going to come through. And if you see there, I measure up off of a base to the bottom of the module, you know, from the bottom of the module up to the top lip to the lowest point that the coil will be. And then I measure up on my box here, and I used a 5/16 hole here. You know, I just marked down and then came up from the bottom from where the dry fit was. And then once I got these holes drilled, you can use a wood burner, works real well. You can use a hacksaw, whatever you want. You just need to cut these out. And then that will drop down in there once you get it soldered together. And then your lid is going to look like this. For the momentary switch that I have, it's a 3/4 inch hole, and it's just going to pass through like this. But this is basically all the modification you need to do to your box. Once you have the momentary switch in and you get your holes cut out for these and drilled, you know, you'll be able to start feeding wire through. You can solder your coil onto the module and get it set down in there. And like I said, I'm hot gluing mine. There's other ways you can affix it, but for what it is, this is real easy. This isn't something that's going to get beat around a lot, so I think that is sufficient. Worked on my other one. But you'll mount your module in there, let your glue dry, and then you'll feed your pigtail through. And I purposely like to leave the end of mine out, because without having, you know, something, there's a little lip on the end of this pigtail right here. If you can see it there, see that little lip? I drill my hole so that is cut where that will stop right there, because you're going to be putting pressure against it when you go plugging the other end in. I guess unless you end up leaving it plugged in. But this will also stop you from being able to have an accident or push too hard and push that back through, because as we all know, hot glue is not going to just let it go, but it's also not going to be the strongest in the world, and it's not going to hurt anything for this to be out. What this also does is it keeps the inner part of that, you know, protected in there. That's going to be stiff, and where your button's going to sit in there, unless you want to have a monster of a box that takes up a whole bunch of space and is unwieldy, you know, this is the option. You leave that end out. It benefits you in a couple different ways, and it brings the flexible part of your wire closer to that end, so it's easier to make the turn up into the momentary switch. And then, I mean, it doesn't get any easier than that. You're going to clean up the holes where they're cut out, attach your power to the momentary switch, use what you cut off to go from the other side of the switch to the module, and then your ground is going to go directly to the module. And you're done. You know, fold the wires down in there where they won't be a problem. I like to zip tie mine, that way they're up out of the way, and they can't get next to anything hot if it would heat up. And then I'll drill a few holes in the lid, just small 1/8 inch holes, so it can breathe a little bit, and then clean it all up, put the lid on. You're done. That's how easy this is. I'll be back with the further steps of this as I go along. Okay, everything's mounted now. Hot glued in. The wires are connected. The coil is soldered to the contact plate. And although this is my worst solder job ever, it'll definitely work. Also, with the momentary switch, it doesn't matter which side you go in or out. They will both work. Now we can go ahead and test it, just to make sure that we have power and that I haven't made any kind of mistakes before I close it up. what I'm using here is a little hobby knife that earlier had the little saw blade attached to it that I cut the slots out for the coil. And you can see it very quickly gets red hot. Okay, so here's the finished product. Not too bad, I'd say, for 30-40 minutes worth of work and a few dollars. These are incredibly simple to make. Something anybody can do. I hope I've inspired anybody watching this to try something new. And heck, if you want, take your wife to dinner or buy a pair of shoes with the money that you just saved. For an example, you can see here that right about now is when I push the switch and engage the power, and it takes about 4 to 5 seconds until they start heating up, and I hold them for a little while longer to go on down. But with something like a syringe or a scalpel blade, you're looking at about 2 to 3 seconds. That's primitive mycology. Thanks for tuning in.